Praise the Lord. And today, um, I like black glasses. Oh, this is so cute. Okay, I'm sorry. Total squirrel. But this is the first time I looked at myself with the glasses on. All right. And I don't need them now. All right. For the purposes of this, I'm so sorry, y'all. I'm settling down. Today, in honor of Mother's Day, we're going to talk about talking about sex with your kids and why that's important. Okay. One of my professors told me, it was so funny. She was like, if you would like your child to grow up to be a sex therapist, don't talk to them about sex. That's it. Just don't talk to them about it at all. And they'll go find all the information on their own and probably feel that they need to become a sex therapist. And I, I think she's right, because that's kind of why I became a sex therapist. Is I was in her class, and then she was just a regular group counseling teacher at first, and I was like, wow, nobody told me any of this. And then I took her human sexuality class, mind you, this is my quarter life crisis, so around about age 30, and I'm like, nobody told me any of this at all, and so I kept wanting more information, more information, more information. Then I wanted other people to have more information. And so hence I became a sex therapist. So you need to talk to your kids about sex, which means before you do that, you need to sit down and think about what you feel about sex. Like, what do you think about sex? And then, like, what would you want your kids to know? And so I am going to stop talking and let everybody else jump in, because I have some things that I want you to think about and say, but I want to give everybody else a voice so I don't wind up talking for the whole 30 minutes. All right. So we're going to go around counterclockwise on my screen. So Jessica Addison, who actually has children, what would you advise a parent?
Well, in sex therapy, a lot of times we have clients who, when we ask them, like, who taught you about sex? What's your first influence of sex? When they talk about it in terms of what their parents told them, it's always a cut and dry. You're going to get pregnant. It's disease. It's nasty. So it looks like this separate black cloud. Don't go down that road because it's dangerous down there. But at the same time, we enjoy it. So it's kind of confusing and it's kind of biased in a sense. So let them know that it is enjoyable. Talk to them about the emotional aspect of it, the biological aspect of it, but also be mindful of the age that you're telling your kids. Don't give it to them all at once. Give it to them in small dosage. Have age appropriate conversations, because sometimes it can be overwhelming for kids as well. And a lot of times when we don't have those conversations, they get the social media introduction to it, and they just want to go from 0 to 100. So, but I feel like if you spoon feed them a little bit, they kind of can get a gist, and they're not as curious to see versus telling them they can't have that. Because children are curious, and even preteens, they hear conversations with their peers and all that good stuff, and the curiosity is there. I know
Excellent
that's a lot
point.
of stuff. That was a lot of different stuff, but
No,
yeah.
no, excellent point. And I want to give somebody an example of what age appropriate is.
Mm.
And when you're right, like when you start talking to them early, then it's a continued conversation. And so think about just kind of the money conversation. You're not telling a 5-year-old how to budget, but you are
Yes.
telling them, okay, you got $1 and you picked up a piece of candy that costs $1.50. We don't have enough. What do we have to do? All right. So same thing with sex. And then 5, you're just gonna say these body parts are private. We don't let people touch them unless we really want them to, and we'll get to that when you're older. Um, Education on for a while we were really concerned as a profession about kids stumbling across like condoms on the playground or something like that. I can't remember why we were so concerned, but like, hey, if you ever see like a balloon that looks icky, don't touch it, or something like that. If anybody ever tries to touch your body and you don't want them to, come tell mommy and daddy. No matter what they say, mommy and daddy are always going to be here and we're going to believe you. So just that's age appropriate. And then maybe if they see something on TV because it was a commercial one time where it just like somebody just kind of jumped on them and started kissing them. Like I can't remember what it was, but it was like almost like a Skittles commercial. Something like it kind of took me aback. Like, wait a minute, we doing that? Like it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I didn't know if I was on that type of channel. And so anytime something like that happens, that's a conversation. Well, see how that didn't happen? We like for consent to happen. This is what consent is, and going from there. And it's a beautiful little video on YouTube called Consent Tea, TEA, like you drink. Have y'all seen it?
Mm-mm.
Okay, go look at Consent Tea. It's so cute. And it's like a 2-minute video, and it explains content as if you're trying to give somebody a cup of tea. And so it talks about like if you offer them a cup of tea, they want the cup of tea, but when you go get the cup of tea and bring it back and they're asleep, they can't take the tea. They no longer want the tea.
Mm,
They're not awake for the key, you know.
that's cute.
It is really cute. So there's a video out there called Consent Tea, which is really, really good. And I think you can listen that I would start 7 and 8 with maybe that Consent Tea video. This is the thing. Parents are always taken aback at how early their kids get to sex and sexuality. And I
Mm,
need you to know, parents, you are not the only person raising your children. I'm going to say you're
mm,
60% raising your kids, and culture, media, their friends, their big cousins is the other 40% that's raising your kids. And so have the conversations early. And the more conversations you can have, the easier it's going to be for you to talk to them. And it's the easier it's going to be for them to talk to you. So, okay, Jessica, I know you had something. I'm going to ask you to write it down because I got to
okay.
pass it to Taj because this is going to go
Yes.
by real fast today. I got a lot to say. I can tell. I'm
Yes,
sorry. All right, Taj.
yes. I want to speak directly to the parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to encourage them to educate themselves about sex. Like I know you feel like you know
Mm-hmm.
because you have kids, right? So it's like, well, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
However, learning how to speak to your children about sex is a
Yep.
completely different skill. And you will learn more about your own sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just thinking about my mother is a baby boomer. And the sex conversation we had was terrible. Oh, I love her so much. It was awful. It was awful. And basically what happened was I'm the youngest of three. I have two
Mm-hmm.
older brothers. And so when I was 18, she sat us down and said, y'all got questions about sex? And the three of us was like, no. I mean, my brothers were in college. I was graduating high school. It was like, no. And then we moved on. That was it. That
Oh,
was it.
wow.
And
Okay.
so when I grew up more, I realized, oh, her mother didn't talk to her about sex.
Yeah.
So there was no real conversation.
Yeah.
My mother really only knew sex was something you do when you get
Mm-hmm.
married and then you do it to have kids. Boom, boom, boom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was it. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, I give her a lot of grace because, like, she tried. And that
Yeah.
was her
Yeah.
best
Yeah.
attempt, you know? She tried, and I respect her for doing that. And now that I'm a sex therapist and my parents are, they're entering this new age is because their kids are married and they're opening up and having like more comprehensive conversations with
Mm-hmm.
us. It's really become an educational experience for us both, like a nice transaction of
Wow.
information. And with that being said, I really encourage mothers of all ages to start learning more and to really get into it. And I have some books that I could recommend. And the more you know, the easier it'll be for you to
Mm-hmm.
explain it in elementary terms to your
Mm-hmm.
kids instead of being flustered and anxious and, oh my gosh, no, they're going to think about sex. And it's just like, yes,
Yeah.
they are, but
Yeah.
you can guide the conversation and it just take a
Yeah.
little psychoeducation to get there. So we are here for that and we have
Yes.
resources for that.
Excellent job. Okay, we're gonna come at the end, and I want you to give us the name of those book titles and all of that. All right, Mary Hannah, and then
Yeah.
Jessica, I got you
Well,
next.
The first thing that came to my mind is like the parents, like, y'all are the ones keeping us in business by not talking to your kids about sex, because what happens is those kids grow up and then they come to us because that is what we hear across the board, is that like my parents didn't talk to me about sex, maybe they did but it was with their brothers instead, and they're the only girl in the family. Like there are just so many across the board consistently, like parents set the tone early on that sex was not to be talked about, that it was shameful, that it was something that only happened within the confines of marriage. And that's the thing, is like parents, like you set the tone for your kids about what sex is. And I loved what was said earlier about how you are not the only ones teaching your kids about sex. Culture also is. And so kids are getting a lot of conflicting messages about how you're like teaching them that they can't talk about it, that they shouldn't think about it, whereas culture is telling them to think about it and talk about it all the time.
All the time.
And so they are the ones getting these conflicting messages. And y'all, they're thinking about sex anyway. They are going to want to have sex anyway. They're going to want to learn about it anyway. So where do you want them getting the information from?
Yeah.
You got to think about how in Emily Nagoski's book, Come As You Are, there is this really great metaphor. Yes, that is such a great recommendation. I'm sorry to steal that one from you, Taj.
It's okay.
There is this metaphor about how like your sexuality is like a garden, and it's kind of like the world around you and your parents that kind of tend it for you as you're growing up and plant these seeds, and then eventually you take it over as the person and tend it for yourself. And so parents, like, how do you tend your child's garden? You know, like, do you neglect it? Do you plant seeds of guilt and shame and taboo? Like, what are you planting that they will have to take over one day, even when they are married and trying to figure out sex for themselves?
Oh, that's so good. I love that. All right. One of the things I want to talk to about parents, I'm coming, Jessica, I promise, is just like with parenting, period. We don't want to just tell our kids what not to do. Don't draw on my wall. We want to also tell them what to do. Like, hey, instead of drawing on the wall, see this 500 ream of paper? You can draw on all of these sheets of paper. You know, we want to redirect them in a positive way. The same thing with sex. It's not don't have sex. It's, hey, this is how I'd like sex for you to be. I'd like sex to start at about this age for you, or whenever you're ready. But give them, and which means parents, you need to sit down and think about that. What is the message that I want my kids to get? Am I okay with them having sex in the first time in the back of a car? Which happens for a lot of people, a lot of baby boomers, actually. That was their first sexual experience, and it's not so bad. But, like, what do you want for your child? And start thinking about it so that you can articulate that, and you're not just saying, don't do this, don't do this, don't do that, because then they're left not knowing what to do, and then they're open to doing everything, you know? And I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a huge case in Georgia, one of the counties, where I think STD was like running rampant throughout a high school. And all of these kids were like it was huge. It was like a STD epidemic, and I can't remember what county it was in Georgia for a while. And the parents had no clue the kids were being sexual, none whatsoever. And they were doing all kind of things. And so specifically, one of the things that came out is because a lot of the girls knew not to have sex, they needed to stay virgins. They were having anal sex instead, so that they could stay virgins. And it's like, oh, okay. And so when we don't give information, that's how kids find workarounds. It's going to be a thing. It's going to be a thing. And so it was huge. I can't even remember when it was. I feel like it must have been in the early 2000s, but like it was a huge thing, like health department, because whatever STD, it was running rampant. So, yeah. All right, Jessica. Wait, I got to go to Jessica Edits and Taj, I promise. But then
That's gonna be real quick.
I'm like duct tape over my mouth. I won't say anything after the Jessica. Okay.
Just for an example, because I'm like the mom of the group or what have you. My 11-year-old recently, she told me about something that happened on the playground. These boys came up to her and her friends and were asking about periods. And the little boy said, "Does it have something to do with virginity?" And then my daughter was like, "Mommy, I didn't." She said something about virginity. I don't know anything about virginity. I don't know what virginity is. And she just kept saying virginity. I'm like, well, baby. We already talked about periods. I already get her to talk about why she's having a period. It has
Mhm,
nothing to do with virginity, and you don't
mhm,
need to be worried about virginity right now. We'll talk about that later. That's
mhm,
what I said. So when I took her to her grandmother's, and she told grandma about it, and then my sister was there, she said it just like that. Talked about virginity, said the word 50 million times. My sister thought it was her segue to tell her what virginity was. So unbeknownst to me, now I'm being
Mm.
told that now she knows what virginity is. And then my daughter is like, ew, that's icky, what have you. I say that to say, you need to make sure your whole tribe's on the same page. And I had a lovely conversation
mm,
with her and told her that I understand how you might have taken it, as that was your green light to tell her about virginity. But I've already talked to her about that. And if
yeah,
you feel like you want to add your 2 cents, please come and talk to me because she's such in a developmental stage right now. And me being her mother, when it comes to
mhm,
those conversations, I want to have that with her.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's to say, kids are grown out here.
yep.
So I have those conversations early and make sure everybody is on the same page in your tribe
Right,
because they could be in for a lot that they're not ready for. And they know all
yeah,
these terminologies, and these kids are throwing periods and virginity all in the same. It has nothing to do with
right,
that. I was
right.
like,
And
yeah.
how? What grade are you in at age 11?
My daughter, her birthday's late. She's in 5th grade.
That's exactly when that's when I started getting groped by boys, 5th grade.
Really,
All
fifth
right, so
grade.
parents out there, you need to start the conversations in 4th grade. You need
Yeah.
because that's when I remember my breast starting to develop that year. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I've always had big breasts, so I remember my a button popping off my shirt and having to stay in the classroom.
Oh.
And that's when boys started like running by me and copping feels and all kind of
And they don't think
craziness.
of sex how we think of sex.
They
So it's like
don't.
your adult mindset, you're thinking of how you and your partner have sex, where they think it's just a kiss and a touch on the boobs. They think that's sex
Hmm.
to them. So it's
Right?
so simple.
So simple. So simple. All right, Taj, you have it.
Okay, I had a squirrel moment when when you were talking about the STD
Hmm.
epidemics in the high schools.
Hmm.
I immediately thought about, do y'all remember when there was a similar story in nursing homes in Georgia?
Yes.
Oh,
That's
I
the
don't
highest
remember. I
STD
Mm-hmm.
didn't
rate in
know
nursing
that.
homes.
Okay,
Yes.
but I do remember that STD rates were rising in the baby boomer
Hmm.
population.
It
I didn't know.
got bad. Like
Okay.
I did a whole project on it in undergrad, but the books that I have.
Okay. Good.
So, as Mary Hannah suggested, Come As You Are, excellent
Great
book, but
book.
there's also a workbook that comes with it. And the workbook is great. It's got journal prompts and walks you through everything that she talks about in this book. So, I do recommend the duo. And this duo, she comes first and he comes next. These
Okay.
books break down biology, they break down the psychology, they break down consent, they break down sensuality from the books are written from a male perspective, but he is, I want to say he is a sex therapist.
What's
Yes.
what's his name?
Ian Kerner,
Oh,
PhD. It
hmm.
says he's the hottest, hippest sex expert of our time. So
Of
okay.
course it does. I think
But
we
no,
are.
these two books are really
Yeah.
they're really easy read and
Mm,
I mean chock full of information,
yeah.
chock full of it. So I
Okay.
do recommend these four
Yeah.
reading materials.
Jessica, you were gonna say something?
No, I'm adding that to my shopping list. That's all I was saying.
It's worth it.
Are you on
No,
Amazon
it's
right
worth
now?
it.
All right.
Yeah.
I want to give you guys, and then I'm gonna talk a little bit about something else. All right. It was called The Lost Children of Rockdale County, and it was 1996, and it was a syphilis outbreak. It was a
Mm.
syphilis outbreak. So he made like it hit the national news. It was huge. Um, Okay, what I want to say one last thing, because Jessica, you alluded to this, and I want to break it down even further. If your child is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they're touching themselves, there's no sexual connotation around that. They have simply, as a new human being on this earth, figured out somehow that if I touch this part of my body, it feels a little bit better than if I touch another part of my body. That is all that is going on. And so you as a parent, don't start to freak out. Oh my God, my child sexually active, somebody's touched my child. Probably not. Probably not. Probably. I mean, they're kids. Kids can figure out even at 1 month old what they like. It's so funny. But you can have a baby, they're just like, oh, they don't like you to sit down and hold them. They want you to walk around the house. Kids very quickly know what they like and what they don't like. Every kid has figured out that cupcakes taste better than spinach. Like they have figured out their likes. They have figured out that hugs feel really good and they'll ask for hugs. That's all they're doing. They figured out that if I rub this one part of my body, it feels a little bit better than the rest. Okay, especially little boys. Little boys love their penises. They're these things, and they're just hanging off their body, and they're easy to touch. And then they happen to figure out, when I rub this part of my body, I just like it a little bit more. That's all that's going on, period. And so stop attributing adult brain, adult desires, adult thoughts to a brain that just got onto the earth and is not capable cognitively of those thoughts yet. Remember, the brain is still developing up until the age 25. And so 5 years old, they just don't have it. They don't have it yet. And so all is going on is they have figured out this is a little bit more pleasurable than something else. And so you as a parent, just gently redirect that behavior. Oh, I see you like touching that part of your body. That's one of those private parts we talked about. So we need to do that in private. That's it. That's it. Parents with kids with special needs, because it seems like autism is being diagnosed more and more and more. Asperger's, any other special needs that may have your child developmentally delayed, just because they may cognitively be developmentally delayed does not mean they're going to be sexually developmentally delayed. So things are going to happen. And so you've got to start redirecting them on those behaviors sooner rather than later. So soon as you see those behaviors start to pop up, start redirecting. Hey, that's something you need to do in the bathroom. Hey, that's something you need to do in your bedroom. Hey, make sure you lock the door when you do that. It's gonna happen. Like it's gonna happen. And so my hope, though, is if parents can start redirecting that behavior sooner rather than later, then teachers in school won't have to start, won't have to deal with that. Because I know several teachers, especially in that middle school population, who've had to be in very uncomfortable situations because the parents had not addressed it at home or said, "Hey, this kid is currently in this stage of life. And so therefore, these are some of the things that we've been telling them at home. You may need to tell them the same thing. It may happen in the classroom." And just understanding if it's that developmental delay, they may not understand everything. They may not understand the nuances of culture and society. So please, please, please remember those things. Okay, final thoughts. Mary Hannah, you haven't said anything. I think I gave
Yeah.
you the floor once.
Yeah. So like my last two final thoughts are also like one, please don't be afraid to teach your children, like your sons, about female sexuality slash biology.
Mm,
Like whether your son grows up to like have a female partner or female coworkers or female friends, like he
mhm.
should know how a period works. And there are so many men that do not, and
Oh,
even
that
some
was
that
so
think
funny
that
to
you can hold it in.
me.
And so like please don't be afraid to educate your sons so that they can grow up to be good citizens, good friends, good husbands.
Mhm.
Also to don't be afraid to get creative if you have to. If you are a single dad and you really don't know how to talk to your daughters, enlist the help of some trusted female person in her
Mhm.
life. And even you can even say, like, hey, I'm going to have like grandma come and talk to you, and, having that conversation with grandma about what the conversation is going to be. Please let me know if you have any questions. If you feel like, you just don't know enough right now, or you'd like her to have someone trusted to talk to her about it.
Mhm.
Maybe you're a mom that you come from a generation where like that is so weird that like,
Mhm.
and so unfathomable that it's like, this freaks me out. Enlist the help of a family member. Like,
Mhm.
don't be afraid to get creative so that you can have some kind of helpful conversation, as opposed to feeling like you have to do it this perfect way so you don't do it at all.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. So personally in my life, we've had me and my friends have had the opportunities to date a couple of single dads. Single dads, y'all are not having hygiene conversations with your daughters. I don't know if y'all don't know they need to be had or not, but like I think all of my friends who have dated a single dad who has had a daughter, a young daughter, a teenage daughter, we had to step in and say, okay, this isn't going on. And so, single dads, if you are out there under the sound of my voice, please, as soon as I'm going to say even before, as soon as she gets her period, but I'm going to say before, you need to have an older female come talk to her about feminine hygiene and what does that look like and the different products that are available to her across the spectrum, and making sure that she has a good understanding. Moms, please, please have a full conversation with your daughters about all of the products that are available for feminine hygiene and everything. It's kind of um I remember somebody telling the story. It's almost like their mom would just kind of throw pads in their room and like a drive-by, like run and throw them and like run. Hopefully we don't have to have a conversation. And so, but you need to have good conversations about female hygiene. Like those are body parts. They need to be looked at. You need to know your body parts. So if something changes on them, the color changes on them, there's a rash or something that happens, you want to know, like you want to like, wait a minute, this didn't used to look like this. Is something going on with my body? And so parents, please do that. Okay. All right. Anybody, any last comment? Because we're a minute over. That's it. Okay. This is a wonderful conversation. I love it. All right. You guys have a wonderful spring weekend. Happy Mother's Day, everybody. And we'll see you next time. All right. Bye-bye.